Okay, so in this part of the tutorial we are going to have a brief overview of the template that I'm going to be using throughout the series. It's a very basic design. You can see it in front of you at the moment. What we're going to be doing is in another part of in the next part of this tutorial we're going to be cutting this up. So in this video we're going to be reviewing the markup. We're not going to look too much at styles or anything like that, but try to understand the markup and the styling if you don't already understand the front end side of development. But we'll be reviewing the markup, so feel free to skip this if you're already accustomed to HTML, CSS, things like that. Yeah, so essentially this is what we're going to be building our site on. The reason I've chosen such a basic template or created such a basic template is just because of how everything's laid out. We've got the menu at the top here, including a logo, which is just text at the moment. We've got a header for whichever page we're on. At the moment we're on template.php, which just houses the markup and the styles. There's no back-end code. And we've got a content area here, which is going to be things like the registration form, any error pages, or anything like that. Now we've got a widget sidebar as well, which you can see separated by this dotted line, and this is going to house the login form, so the username and password that the user is going to be able to type in. It's also going to house things like how many users are currently active on the site, or how many users are currently logged in, just things like that. So we can duplicate this if we want. So let's jump right over to the markup and have a look at everything in here. Okay, so I'm using HTML5 semantics. So I'm using an HTML5 doc type. Don't worry too much about this, it doesn't make a difference. I'm just using this for the semantic elements. It's just a lot easier to describe. I'm attaching or linking in a style sheet, which is screen.css. You can see here. It's not a long style sheet at all. There's a few things in here that after you've downloaded this template, which is available at the phpacademy.org forum, you might just want to have a look through it. So look at certain properties and everything like that if you're not accustomed to CSS. So yeah, we've got the sort of head area here that we've got all of. Let me just line this up. We've got this head area, which is essentially all of things like the metadata, the style sheets, the title, and this is going to be included in its own file. So we're going to break this away and store this in its own file, and it will look something like this eventually. I've just pulled this up as an example of what we're going to be doing in the next part. So you can see here we're just including includes/head.php, which essentially just replaces all of this and puts it in. So then we've got our body, which comes all the way down to here. And inside of our body we've got a header. So this is this area that you can see up here, all of here. And in here we've got an h1 with a class of logo, and this is a specifically styled block of text. We've also got a nav, again another an HTML5 element, and we've got an unordered list with our menu items, and these are styled just to show in a row basically. So go and have a look at the styles with that as well. Now one thing I haven't included on here is some kind of polyfill to allow Internet Explorer, I believe 7 and 8, to deal with the HTML5 semantics. So you'll need to go and perhaps develop this in another browser until you feel comfortable enough that you can go and do that research on your own. But either way, that's just a quick note. I've got a div here, which is a rather unsemantic element. It's essentially clearing the floats from here. This is somewhat considered to be a bad way to do things because it's adding extra markup. But if you see this, it's basically clearing the floated elements here, because we're floating each one of these left so they sit next to each other, and this basically clears it. So if you go over to the styles, you can see we've got a class of clear somewhere. Let's just find it. Oh, there it is at the bottom. So clear both. So it's clearing left and right floated elements, and that's the end of the header. We've then got a div with an ID of container, and we've got an aside, and then we've got our main content here. This, of course, could be wrapped in a div itself, a container itself, but I've just left it floating around. So aside is basically another HTML5 element. We've got a div within here with a class of widget, within this class we've got a header and then an inner area. So if I just go ahead and like copy and paste this down, and I go ahead and refresh, you can see that that basically just duplicates that you can see. So we're going to be using the top one here for the login form, this one for how many users are registered with the site, etc, etc. And these will all go in there in separate files, which will include perhaps based on a condition. So if the user is not logged in, we might want to say include this particular widget that shows a login form. Or if the user is logged in, we might want to show the particular widget that greets the user and tells them that they can change their password, log out, etc. And like I said before, we've got this down here, which is just the header for the page, and then some area. So essentially all of this here goes in the header. You can see the last thing we include is the aside, and then from just after the content from here is included in the footer, and that's all put in footer.php, this here. Obviously we have a footer, I didn't explain that, but it's fairly self-explanatory. So essentially what we're going to end up with is a page looking like this. Let me just type it out in a sort of mock form. So we'll include, let's just say template / header.php. It might not be called that when we do it, but it does demonstrate what we're going to be doing. So what this is going to do is, let me just tidy this up a bit. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to, if we then want to go ahead and create another file, we include the header, we include the footer, and therefore we don't actually need to go and duplicate the markup. So if we need to make a change to the header somewhere, we can go in and make a change to the header or the sidebar or some metadata, add some metadata. The same with the footer. So we're making it a lot more flexible by including our header and our footer as sort of templates rather than duplicating pages. So hopefully that makes sense, and in the next part of the tutorial we're going to actually be cutting this up and looking at the directory structure of our login and registration system as well. So we'll be able to cut everything up and make sure that we start to work on a really good ground for building this up and making it a lot easier for ourselves.